Donald, I am trying, but I'm just not getting the results. What's up with that? Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist podcast. I'm your host, Donald Kelly, the Sales Evangelist, and I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you on this Monday morning. I'm excited for this episode to answer this question here. Sometimes we get this is, I'm trying, Donald, I'm doing my best. Why am I not getting the results that I was hoping that I could, and so forth? And there could be many reasons to that, but we're going to take some time and answer that question or share my thoughts on that. But before we dive into that, let's go ahead and give a shout out real quick. I want to give a shout out this week to Clay Kant. Thanks so much for connecting with me on LinkedIn, Clay. Also want to give a big shout out to Stacy Waite. Also want to give a shout out this week to John Robertson. And I also want to give a shout out to Max Peterson. Thank you so much for connecting with me, guys, on LinkedIn. I'm grateful for the follow, grateful for the kind words. I'm grateful that you guys are out there hustling. You're listening to the show, and I hope that it continue to bring you success, and you find success in what you're doing. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn, Donald C. Kelly. You can also find me on Twitter, Donald C. Kelly. You can also find us on Instagram, Donald C. Kelly, and on Facebook. Our private Facebook page for sellers like you, for me, hustlers, is called the Sales Evangelizers. You can also go ahead and post your questions there, insights, ideas, articles, whatever you read, or just connect with other sales professionals to learn and to grow. You can also go ahead and like our Facebook page, which is the Sales Evangelist. I'd love for you to like that page. That's where you can stay connected with us and to see some behind the scenes things, what we're doing back here, what's working, what's going on. As always, you heard about TSE Hustlers League. Go ahead and check it out. Go to thesalesevangelist.com/hustlers, thesalesevangelist.com/hustlers, and get connected to TSE Hustlers League. Now, let's talk about this question. Donald, I am doing the work, or I am just not seeing the results like I thought I would. This is something that I said as well as a new seller, something that I said whenever I went into a different industry. You try, you're just not seeing the results. Now, several things come to mind. First of all, is that you got to give yourself some time. You have to give yourself some time. You have to recognize that there's a learning curve. Sometimes you need to really understand your prospects, really understand their needs, understand the industry, understand the company, understand how that benefits your clients and how you can articulate that message. It takes time for that. And maybe you're working on that. But I've seen a lot of times that what tends to happen as sales professionals and in other areas of life, especially in health industry or workout, is that people go to the gym, and if they don't see like the muscles in like 2 days, then they get freaked out and they say this stuff is not working. But you got to understand things takes time. It takes some time. You got to keep doing it. And the other thing that I understand too is the practice of the fundamentals. This is where a lot of people fall short. And I'll give you an example. I like to golf every once in a while. I'm in Florida, so I got some new golf club recently. So if you're in Florida, you want to go golf, let me know. But the thing about it, though, one thing you got to recognize with golf is that you have to be consistent, and you have to make sure that you got to keep your form properly. You got to keep your fundamentals. Because if you were to turn your club in just a tad bit or out just a tad bit, it could be a big difference in the trajectory of that ball and where it goes. And a lot of times people don't practice those fundamentals. They get up and they feel that they have big upper body, so they go ahead and whack the ball as much as they can, and the ball doesn't really go that far, and they don't necessarily go on the straight course. They end up somewhere in the trees or whatnot, and that's because they're just not doing the fundamentals. You're not doing the proper stance. You're not doing the proper procedures, and if you practice those proper procedures, it becomes second nature. One of those simple fundamental procedures that salespeople need to practice is better planning. Sometimes we take a focus of just doing too many things that are not going to be beneficial towards our success today or next week or in the future. We might think it's like, I don't know, like you're working so much on, I mentioned this before, working so much on a presentation when you need to focus on finding the prospect. You need to make sure that you are doing those fundamentals. If you need to get on the phones, you get on the phones. If you need to get online and find your ideal customers, you need to get online, find them after hours so that when you get to game time, you can be able to connect with them and to build relationships, offer value, and then to set appointments and go from there. There's a key difference between being effective and just like doing a bunch of stuff. There's a key difference. One of them work and one of them don't. Doing a bunch of stuff doesn't necessarily mean you're successful. And a lot of times as a salesperson, we're out there, we're doing a lot of things throughout the day. And then we realize that we actually work 3 hours of the day if you really count the activities that are important. So your planning is a key part. You got to make sure you're doing the fundamentals, such as understanding your ideal customer, or making sure that you're doing those activities that are going to drive success, and that you are making sure that you're using your scripts. If you I don't care what you say. We've done episodes on those in the past, but you got to make sure that you know what you're going to say. You got to practice that. Even doing these podcasts, I make sure I have an understanding what I'm going to say so that I can be effective in articulating the message properly. So you got to make sure you do that. So now that got the fundamentals down, you got the planning down, you have to be persistent. I kind of hinted at this earlier on with the gym example. But as a sales professional, you have to be persistent in what you do. And I'll give you an example. Here's one that you might think is startling, and you've heard it before. I think many sellers, about 80 to 90% of salespeople give up after the fourth no. And what I mean by that is that you're connecting with a prospect, you find out that they say they're not interested. Well, now they give up totally. Well, they don't go back and try another means like later. They don't try to stay in touch. They don't try to build a relationship. And then ended up like in several months, a prospect gets a close of business with a competitor. How did that happen? What happened there? I'm sure that competitor was just a little bit more persistent. They did more than you did the first time. They probably just didn't call and say, buy my product. They probably made sure that they built some kind of relationship. They probably just connected with them and offered some kind of value. They probably made sure that they showed them how this can help the organization or whatever they have to offer. And then next thing you know, they have just a continuous communication. And then over time, they close the deal in a matter of 2 months. Compared to calling in one time, they're not interested in closing it. That's a big mistake a lot of time new sellers make. Sometimes, again, the prospect may say no, but it doesn't necessarily mean no right now, mean no forever. It just means no for right now. What can you do to stay top of mind and keep going? Give you another example with me and with the podcast. When I first started the show, there was an initial spike. It was just like the new beginner's luck or whatever you want to call it. I started to gain some interest. iTunes started to push my podcast out there, and it was good. And then over time, I was no longer new and noteworthy. That's a place. If any of you look at iTunes, go on iTunes and look at the podcast or the music section. Those are the little a section up at top that says new and noteworthy. It's the new podcast or new music or new videos, and iTunes put those people there and push them out to the viewers. But after 8 weeks, you get out of that, and I started falling into this kind of valley, and the podcast downloads, so to speak, started getting low and low, and I'm like, okay, people are listening to the show or what? And I stayed at a steady low number for quite some time. Lower in comparison to the first out of the chute. So I was like, okay, well, something must be going wrong. I should stop the podcast. But one of the important things I realized in that moment was the power of consistency. Put out valuable content and be consistent. Put out valuable content and be consistent. The crazy thing was in no time, after, I think it was like 4 or 5 months riding that, low valley number, then something happened. It started to have an uptick. And then I got mentioned it was a year ago, got mentioned in Entrepreneur Magazine. I was grateful for that. The author wrote about up-and-coming podcasters, and I was one of them mentioned for sales. And then I got mentioned in another magazine. And then we had an opportunity to take advantage of local media here and got mentioned in another magazine. So the podcast started to get an uprise, and to the point where, since last year to this year is just like amazing as far as the number of people listening to the show, the number of opportunities we've had to connect with clients and to gain new clients, sales training clients or coaching clients, or to go and speak at different places. That all came because of the consistency. So even though you don't see the results right now, it doesn't mean that it's not working. You got to keep going at it. And it's because I was consistent that author of that magazine saw that. And it's because of the consistency and because of the episodes that we kept pushing out that people started to notice that, hey, this podcast has a lot of great guests, a lot of great episodes. Let me listen to it. Let me tell my friends about it, tell my coworkers about it. And then next thing you know, the podcast grew immensely. That is the same thing that applies to you and your business. As an entrepreneur or as a salesperson, you have to keep doing the fundamentals. You have to make sure that you're planning and using your time wisely and being effective. And you have to be consistent. You have to be consistent and persistent if you're trying to be successful. All the greats, those, if you go back to that stat, if 80 to 90% of salespeople give up, what makes those 10% continue to go that get the clients? Well, they're just consistent and they're persistent. They know they have something to offer and they're going to keep going at it. And that is the power when you make that mindset change, when you have that shift, you're going to keep going no matter what. You're going to get no's, but that doesn't mean it's over. You're going to fail sometime, but that means they're doing something. That means you're working, and that means it's working if you're failing because you learn and you grow. But, that's the thing. That's the attitude and mentality you have. So I hope that answers the question, why am I not seeing the success? It could be many different reasons, but if you're practicing those fundamentals things, I guarantee you're going to see some results in no time. All in all, I want you to be successful. I want you to be happy. Most importantly, I want you to go out and do big things.